Not So Average Builder is sponsored by USAGundamStore.com, bringing the hobby to your front door. Use promo code NOTSOAVERAGE and get 10% off your next order. This build series has been brought to you by Turbodork. They have an awesome range of metallic paints, but what they're known for is their color shifts. And they just released a new line of color shift paints that are out of this world amazing. So give them a shout. And if you use promo code NSAB10, you can get 10% off your first order. Hey guys, Tom here, and this is Not So Average Builder. Today we're going to be working on the Noise Marine. In the start of this video, I'm just going to kind of go through and quickly go back through all the airbrushing that I did on it. I'm just going to make it simple. While this is going on though, I want to say that if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. If you have any questions about this particular Noise Marine or the paints that I use, drop a comment down in the comment section below. While this is going on as well, I want to talk about Patreon. I still have 3 patrons, and it's amazing. I want to give a shout out to those 3 people. We got Chris D, Fiddlesworth Frank, and Walter Wilmoth for being awesome people. Now what you've just seen above, I didn't mask off the flames on the guitar because it was just going to be too much of a hassle. So all I did was just overspray it with the airbrush, and now we're just going to paint back in the black. And what that does is that kind of gives you free masking essentially. It is a little time consuming, but it does make the overall look that much better. Now one thing I didn't show was the actual painting of the guitar. And that goes back to why I'm painting the black back in, and I didn't go with a different color. Because I used the Turbodork Spicy Meatball as a red metallic, and it does need a black undercoat. So I went through and painted all the black, and then I went through and painted the guitar using the Spicy Meatball. And I just did 5 thin coats on this, and it was a little flaky, but the more coats I applied, the smoother it got. But that is one of the reasons why I went with this and didn't go with a different color. If I was using like a dark blue or something like that, I could probably get away with just using the dark blue instead of my base coat and going back through with that. Now that is another reason, no matter what color you prime your kits, whether it's gray, black, purple, silver, whatever it is, you want to go back through and paint it with another color, something that you already have. So Army Painter makes a line of color matched primers, so you could use their paints on that and it would be smooth. Now I'm just going back through after I've painted all the details black, and I'm painting in the details like the edges on the shoulder pauldrons. I'm using Scale 75's black gold because I want it to be shiny, but I want it to also be kind of dark because he's still Chaos, and even though he's, you know, got the spotlight on him, I wanted it to kind of be a little grungy, reminiscent of the 90s with the grunge style rock and roll. And all you do is just basically go in and paint in all your details, and we'll touch them up later on. You always want to do thin coats. Thin coats always. I know I've stressed this enough in my videos previously, but seriously guys, thin coats. Don't just slap it on. You will end up hating yourself later on when you can see brush marks and it looks terrible. Trust me, thin coats, thin coats. And you can also see here that the guitar is painted. It's still a little splotchy. I touched this up later on, but it is still a little splotchy. And now we switched over to the silver bits. Now one thing that I still continue to make the mistake of is I use too little of a brush, and you can see here it is taking forever to get color down. And this is Vallejo's silver, which is a really bright silver and has a lot of good coverage. And it's good for small details to use a small brush, but I eventually switch over to a larger brush to cut down on brush marks, because no matter what, whether you thin your paints or not, if you use too small of a brush, you're going to leave brush marks, because you have to touch the surface more times in order to do it, or in order to get the paint down, and you're going to end up just frustrated and annoyed, and we don't want that. This is sped up as well. It's not real time, so I wish I could paint this quickly. I would have everything done in no time. But yeah, just kind of go through, touch all these things up. Now, on here was where I really switched over to the bigger brush, and I think I had my paint too thin as well. Yeah, I did switch over to the bigger brush. Go through and paint in. Don't try and just paint the tops. You're gonna end up stressing yourself out. Just paint it all in there. If you get in the recesses, that's perfect. You want this. We will fix this in a later step, and I will show you what I'm talking about. Alright, now we're going to get into painting bone. And on this I just use straight Ushati bone by Games Workshop, and just painted in those colors. I used it on the horns for the skull on the pauldron. I used it for the, whatever those things are called, the teeth that are coming out of the pauldron itself, because he's Chaos Space Marine. I think that was it as far as that. There wasn't a whole lot of bone aspects to this, because it's more, you know, metallic-y, raw fun, and you just paint those in, do as best you can. Again, thin coats, always do thin coats. I will stress this until I'm blue in the face, but you always want to. I don't know if you noticed the little skull on there. I was going to paint it all bone, and I start to, and I changed my mind halfway through, and I paint it the same color as the pauldrons. I use the black gold by scale 75. Things are going to change as you work with them. It's how the model evolves as you work with it. I had a complete and total idea for it, and then I changed it halfway through, and that just happens. Now we're going to paint the leather. All I used for this was a chocolate brown by Vallejo. Just kind of go through and paint those in. There wasn't a whole lot of leather aspects, and I could have done a black leather, but I thought that warm leather, that warm brown leather color kind of contrasted with the metallic color and gave you an aspect to look at. Now I know that I'm only working on this one particular arm of the guitar, but everything that I'm doing on this carried over to every aspect of it. Now we're going to work on shading. This is a very important part. On the silvers, the golds, and the bone, I did a full wash. So you'll see I'm just kind of putting on here. I went a little thin, and then I need to add a little bit more, and we'll go back and highlight that up later. But basically what you're doing is you're tinting the metallic colors to give them a darker, grungy look, to make them more look realistic. And you'll do this on all the metallics, and we'll worry about the painted aspects of the kit later on. I do something called a pin wash, and I'll go into that here in a few. But remember, you're just going to want to do this all over all the golds, the silvers, and the bones. Now it is important to mention that I did a black wash over the silvers, and on the bone, the leather, and the gold aspects, I used a brown wash. You can do a black wash all over these, but it can kind of make it too much of a stark contrast, and it may not blend well. Where the brown on the bone and the gold and the brown just kind of deepened those colors, and they were complementary colors. So that's another thing when you think of washing. You want to make sure that it's not too contrast. It's like doing Gundams. If you do a black pin wash or panel wash on all the panel lines, it's going to look too dark, almost cartoony, which if that's the look you're going for, then that's awesome. But if you're just wanting to do a straight build and make it kind of look more realistic, then you want to do like a dark brown wash or a gray wash, depending on the colors. And there is some aspects that you can do a black wash on, certain colors like dark blue, stuff like that. You need something to show that there's a panel line there. And you don't want to go on the light spectrum, because then it's going to look kind of weird. Now you see I'm doing the brown wash, and I just kind of go over all the golds, and you want to blur the line so where the blue paint is and the brown wash or in the gold meets, there's a clear separation line, and you kind of want to blur that line and give it a shadow. So I will kind of touch the edge of the blue. I won't go very deep in it because it will stain it, but I touch the edge of the blue so it kind of, if there was any spots that I missed with painting, it will hide those. And that's the beautiful part about it, weathering. And this would be considered a weathering aspect, but we'll fix it later on. Remember when I was talking about that pin wash? So you'll take a very, very fine detail brush, and I do this for the rest of the armor, but it was really prevalent on the guitar, where you've got the gold flames that are obviously raised versus the actual guitar. Now I wanted to make sure that you knew it was raised, or you could clearly see that it was raised. So basically what you do is you take a very thin brush or a very fine point brush, and you trace the outlines, trying your absolute best not to get it anywhere that you don't want it. Now this is sped up, so do not try it at this speed. For the love of God, do not try it at this speed. You will make an absolute mess. This took me about 30 minutes to do. It is not a quick process. However, the results are totally worth it. Totally worth it, especially when you've got something like this. I wanted to keep the guitar kind of clean and not have to highlight the crap out of it. But I wanted the flames to be separate from the actual guitar. Now comes the fun part. So basically with the highlighting stage, you take all of your previous colors. For instance, we'll show you the black gold by scale 75. And what I'm doing is I'm just doing a raised area highlight. And the beautiful part about a wash is it shows you all the recesses and the raised areas, so you know where to put it. It's like paint by numbers. And I just kind of go through here and I hit the edges, and we will do, this is the first step highlight, and we will do another highlight in the future. Same thing with the brown. I just do a simple edge highlight of the brown. I may do some scratches in the leather to kind of make it look more leather. Now for the silver, I'm going to use two steps or two processes. And right now you see me doing the edge highlight and picking out the raised areas to just kind of make it seem brighter where dirt and grime has been rubbed off essentially. Now when we get to the guitar strings, I'll show you a quick way to highlight a large area, and you can do this with just about any color, but a large area in a short amount of time, and that's just dry brushing. So all I've done is I took some paint, got my brush loaded up, dried a majority of it off, and then I'm just going to brush it over top of the guitar strings, and that keeps the recessed areas darker, but the raised areas get highlighted. I did the same thing with the chain, just very, very light pressure, continue over, and allow it to pick up those raised areas. Now I'm doing the bone, simple stuff, just go ahead and pick out your raised areas. I do need to clean my brushes, and so I can get a finer point, but it was still able to work. Now with fangs and teeth, when you're highlighting, you want to go to the very edges. Now we're on the second stage. So what I did for the brown was I mixed in some of the Ushabti bone with the chocolate brown, and I don't remember the ratio, but it gave me a little lighter brown, and that I was able to do a little more scratches and some edge highlights in just a select few areas. I didn't want to edge highlight the whole thing and wipe out all the stuff that I've done before. Now for the gold, all I did was mix in a little bit of the silver that I used on my silvers with the gold. And silver is an amazing additional highlight color to mix in with the golds, with just about any gold. It gives it a much brighter gold. And I just picked it out in very select areas to just kind of give it that extra gleam, that extra pop. And then with the silvers, I just went back through with the base silver and highlighted a little bit less of an area before to kind of give it a blended layered effect. And I also did, you can see what I'm doing right now, I'm glazing in. So I took a blue and I glazed it towards the mouth to make it seem like the mouth was glowing. Alright, here is the progress so far. It is all painted up. It's all highlighted, it's been washed, it is ready to go. I'm ready to get this thing on the tabletop. But it's missing something. It can't go. That would look terrible just on a plain old base. So that may be another video, but I'm calling the Noise Marine itself finished. We're going to do another video on bases, and I'm going to do a base specific to this guy. I'm going to try some new techniques and hope that they work, but that will be in next week's video. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I'd love to have you hang around for a bit, but that's all I've got, guys. Have a wonderful day. Bye.